Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Happy New Year!
Mostly I love it when you surprise me. That's my favorite part of starting podcasts is I never know what's going to happen.
What's he going to do? Hey, guys, I had a great Christmas. I'm going to tell you about a really fun circumstance.
Okay.
You wondering what I'm going to say?
No, I'm pretty sure I know. Unless you had a different Christmas without me.
With my other family. So my dad and my mom came over, as well as a couple other people. But when my dad came over, I said, hey, we have an experience you and I are going to do. Mm-hmm. And I had already previously called my mom and I said, Mom, bring over some extra underoos or some shorts for Dad. Mm-hmm. Do not tell him. But somehow information
got leaked.
It got leaked because he was like, hey, did you bring those things? And I was like, and my mom's like, what things? And I'm like, something's been communicated here. And you guys are playing me for the fool.
You know, that might make sense because your dad was so much more quickly down for this than I thought he'd be.
Yeah, I think she probably was like, you can't tell Justin, but I think he's going to try and make you jump in his plunge or pool. And so, but I was like, whatever.
That makes more sense now.
You liars. But I ended up, saying, all right, we're going to go have an experience. Got him out to the pool and we jumped into the pool together to do a cold plunge. And it was fascinating watching him because I watched the little boy come out of him. First off, his face, I saw an entirely different face than I've ever seen before.
Totally. Yeah.
It was like this little kid being like, I don't want to, Dad. I don't want to. What's happening? It was cool because like as we were getting in, he was like, okay, give me a second. I was like, no, just give me your hand. And so I grab his hand and we run and we jump in. And then I get to spend this beautiful time trying to help him regulate and connect into his body. But I literally feel like I'm in the most beautiful ways working with a little kid.
Yeah.
And
he was vulnerable and so expressive and so open, like wide open to you while he did it.
And the joy afterwards, even when because his body finally regulated, it acclimates and he's like, oh, that was awesome. I would do that again.
He said he'd do it every week with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he loved it. He almost wanted to do it again that day.
Yeah, he said, do you want to do it tonight? And I was like, I love this.
You could tell, you could see this thing inside of him. First of all, you could see the part of him that loves adventure.
Yes.
And I think that oftentimes those parts of us can die when we get focused on busy or life and survival.
Totally.
And so you could see the adventure part of him, the wild side, even in his yes. Like you didn't have to try to convince him. He was like, okay,
we got it. We'll do it.
Yeah. Which that was probably my favorite part was just watching how committed he was to doing it with you and how little resistance he had.
Yeah.
And then you could see him like hate it for a second and be like, why am I doing this? And then you could see him like open up and relax. And then you could see just this pure like power where he's like, I did that. Like you could feel this, like I overcame that. Like this. And that is one of the reasons I love cold plunges is because the whole idea is helping you face something that feels hard, like that feels impossible. And then you face it and then you feel such self-esteem from being like, I did that thing I didn't think I could do.
Yeah. Great self-esteem builder. Anyways, it was awesome. And the fascinating thing is that when we talked to Bryant, our good friend Bryant Ellis the next day, he said that on the same day, he did the same thing with his dad and had the same experience with how his dad, like he felt an entire different encounter with the way his dad expressed himself.
Like both of you were like, oh, I've never gotten to see this side of my dad before.
Yeah, it was a really beautiful thing. So fun Christmas.
That was so great.
Today, if you're listening, today is New Year's Day.
Ooh.
And we have a fun New Year's episode and we're going to get into reflecting on the year behind us. As human beings and the power and value of that and how to walk through that and hold it in a beautiful tensions and within the process and that'll unfold. But before we get started, everybody's favorite course, Living Fully Alive, has hit. Now we did this year. We've changed from it starting in the 1st of January to March at different times. We've rotated. This year we're doing it. It fully is like off and running March 13th, but signups are starting now to get the new year kicked off. And then once we hit March, you'll be rolling into some really fun times with LFA. And that's been one of our courses. It's been amazing. We've had so many people, thousands of people go through it.
Oh, yeah. And the reviews, if you go onto my Instagram, I have like just a reel of reviews because there's so many people that have loved this course. In fact, this is the course we make as the foundation of what you need to know about humans if you're going to work with humans. In any capacity, if you're going to be a teacher, a lawyer,
just the very
a counselor, and not like very basic, like people aren't like, wow, this was a basic course.
No,
people
but the
like,
very basic foundation to like, okay, if I'm just doing life in a leadership level at all, I need to know this information.
Yeah. Like Pizzi calls it our how to be a human course.
Yeah.
Like, we have a great episode on forgiveness. We have one like learning how to reconcile with yourself, learning how to recognize what your heart voice is saying and what it's not saying.
Yeah.
Learning how to interpret your heart voice, learning how to reconcile with yourself, learning how to communicate with others, learning how to understand your emotions. It's just an overall how to be powerful, how to break learned helplessness, how to take your power back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good.
And then we have a couple tools that will change all of your relationships.
Yeah. And with that, we have the immersion program. So the immersion program involves weekly experiences of live consulting where you get to actually watch people's lives get healed. And that's where we've seen community get the most transformation because they're taking the principles that they're hearing about, they're watching it be applied and watching collectively people get really vulnerable and get healing. And it's just been such a fun course.
Well, and then you actually do the course when you're doing it with people that you're seeing every week and you're communicating and you're feeling.
Entire families take it.
And it's like group therapy. The immersion programs, people are like, oh, this is like the best parts of what you get in like an outpatient program.
Yeah. So that's at Justin and Abi. That's abi.com. And you can jump in on that and start your year off with that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people make resolutions starting January. And we were like, you know what we should do is we should help people. Around March is when you have like given up on all your resolutions to change your life. And we're like, that's a great time. Anyway, it's a great time to re-up.
So with that said, let's jump into reflecting.
Yeah. I watched the trailer to The Chosen this season and it like really wrecked me. I cried I rewatched it multiple times just to make myself feel.
Yeah, which we're going to do a podcast episode hopefully this year on set with The Chosen. We were supposed to do it last year, but we ran into some health issues for abs. So, but we might get to go back to that set. Anyways,
that is neither here nor there. But what I'm trying to say is I loved what they said in the trailer so much. I quoted it, which was, she's talking about Jesus and she says, "You told us it would be like that. The bitter often mingled with the sweet, with how you lived, the man of sorrows acquainted with grief." And I loved that because it was showing all these different scenes of him doing different things. But the concept of, you told us it would be like that, the bitter mingled with the sweet by how Jesus lived, which is so true. There were so many things about his life, the glory, the miraculous things, getting to see people healed, getting to see people set free, having crowds gather and they're just being, an amazing like breakthroughs in people's lives and transformation and
hope
family
being restored and connection being restored. And at the same time, you see someone who's being deeply misunderstood, attacked.
Oh, yeah.
Betrayed.
Yeah. And also like his cousin gets beheaded and he knows he's about to die. It is the sweet and the bitter mingled together. And I wanted to do the podcast today because I have spent the last few years working on, so something that trauma can do is it can make you be a black and white thinker. So you can kind of get stuck into ruts, something's good or something's bad. And that has been what I've been working on the last few years, is trying to bring the two together. A great example of this, I would say, is like when you go through a breakup.
Yeah.
And you're like, they're either the best thing that ever happened to you and it's ruining your life that you can't be with them.
I'm losing them. Everything was perfect about that relationship.
Or they're the worst.
Yeah, they were the devil.
They destroyed everything. And it's very, very hard for humans to hold the two emotions at one time. And I say that because I've been working on it. It's freaking hard. It is so hard to hold both.
To find, to both really connect with the beauty and the complexity of the messiness that existed inside of something. And I think that for me, historically in my life, I would go to when something really disastrous felt like it happened. I just threw everything out and I was just like, they were the devil, right? and what I did do is I actually ended up throwing away an enormous amount of love that was available inside of that relationship, because every bit of love that we have the capacity to express to another human being is sourced in God. It is it didn't originate from us. It originates out of our Creator through us. And it's like this idea that like I can still absorb that even if somebody is messy and take it in and allow it to impact me. But if I decide to just say that these people or this situation was so bad and wrong, I can throw out a whole bunch of goodness inside of it. And
I think vice versa. If you only remember the good, you cannot validate the pain. You can't validate
grieve properly.
You can't grieve. You can't understand why you are the way that you are. Yeah. Like, because so much of us is in reaction to the pain we've experienced. So if we don't validate the hardship of what we've gone through, us having a hard time with this thing in the future won't make sense to us. In order for us to have a healthy relationship with ourselves, we have to validate the pain that we go through. And in order to have a healthy frame to process emotionally, like with emotional health and maturity, you have to have an ability to see good. You need both.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about some things that are really scary, because on one side of the coin, if I validate the pain that exists, I'm scared that I will make a villain maybe out of the people that I love, or that all the love didn't count. Right. So I'm scared of that. And then I'm scared of acknowledging
of the pain.
Uh-huh.
Like feeling the pain, getting trapped in the pain, getting lost in the pain.
So that's really scary on that side. On the side of actually just embracing the love, if people are scared, it's like, if I acknowledged all the good things, then that means that my pain didn't matter. And it didn't happen. And it also means that this person can have all access to me. If I accept the love that they did have the capacity to reflect, then that means...
Oh, I can't have boundaries. I'm only allowed to have boundaries.
If they're a villain.
Yes.
And so we have to face the way that there's a whole uprooting of a system inside of us that feels very scary, because we are facing the fears that are governing the way that we're relating to life and experiences.
Yeah, I think so. When we were looking at our year this year, and I think it's really important. I love recapping and being connected to what has happened in a year. It feels like a great time to reflect and recenter and reconnect with the true parts of who you are and what you want moving forward. I think that's a really beautiful thing. And so when we were looking at our year this year, I was thinking, depending on how you tell the story would be how you could narrate our year. Like, it could have been the worst year of our life.
Totally.
It definitely was not going to be the best year of our life, but it could have been the worst year of our life, or it could have been what I would say that it was, which was painful, but with incredible gifts.
Yeah.
And so, but if we narrate that it was either the worst or the best, then our emotions can kind of get stuck under those labels. Our emotions follow how we label something.
Yeah.
And so I had a conversation the other day with somebody where I ended up telling them just the hard things that had happened this year. I don't know how that question landed in that. And after just talking through all the hard things, I was like, oh my God, this year was so hard. How did I survive? And I felt a little depressed.
Yeah, it can spin you into hopelessness, right?
And then I went through though, and I talked through all of the good things. And I was like, it actually was like 50-50. There was like amazing things happening all year, while there was also really hard things happening all year. And when I talk about it like that, my emotions feel safer, because if I look at like, oh no, this was just horrible, and I don't want next year to be like that, then my brain actually starts to look for only threat.
Totally.
And I think I used to have this idea as a kid. I'm almost 40. I'm turning 40 this year. And
old geezer.
I'm going to join you in the old club.
In the 40 club.
But I've been thinking about, I lost my train of thought because you two called me an old geezer. I don't know what we were talking about.
Well, I do want to say that when you start reflecting.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I remembered.
Got it.
And then you can finish. If I see that goodness is, I used to believe, this is where I was going. I used to believe that you could have like an all good year.
Uh-huh.
And so I was waiting. I kept waiting for the all good year when like the momentum is just, everything is great.
Everything's in line and perfect. And
I think I've come to realize that I think this is what life is. The bitter intermingled with the sweet. You know, I have a friend right now who's has this miraculous pregnancy that she's going through, which is amazing. And her dad is really sick at the same time. And I'm like, oh, I used to think, no, there'll just be seasons where everything is magic. Or even like my best friend, Pizzi, when she got pregnant, you know, it was such a miracle because she had so many issues with conceiving and PCOS. And then she was so sick her whole pregnancy. And I think this is, you know, and I've been guilty of doing this before, where I go up to somebody and like, you know, something good that's happening in your life and you're like, oh my God, are you just so happy? Is everything so amazing now that you got this thing you've wanted for forever? And most people at that point are like, yeah. But there's this guilt because normal life is happening while your dreams can be coming true.
Yeah.
Normal life is happening. You know, there's good and hard things, and every good thing that comes into your life brings things you have to learn with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my concept for this podcast is, how do you bridge holding both the bitter and the sweet at the same time?
Well, I want to talk about the bitter real quick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things, we hold judgments towards the bitter things oftentimes. So when something interrupts your life that feels really painful, uncomfortable, something that you didn't want, it's very easy to write a judgment over it and say that's a bad situation. And I'm not saying there aren't true tragic situations.
Yes,
I'm also not saying that any of these things don't come with their pain.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we can take a circumstance like losing a job.
Yeah. Or for us this year, we went through a major betrayal.
Right. And you can take something like that and you can go, okay, this is a terrible, terrible thing. And you can cast judgment on it. Or you can go like, hey, this isn't an ideal thing that I wanted.
Nope.
And I can begin to ask, okay, what is there to extract out of this circumstance? And I can begin to withhold my judgments and allow a scenario to play out. And that's something that we as humans aren't really good at, is sustaining our judgment for any amount of real time.
Like holding it off is what you're saying.
Right.
Like waiting to judge if something's good or bad.
Right. So for instance, there are people
in the ambiguity
that maybe they're in their mid 30s right now, and there's certain aspects of things that they don't have inside of their life that they wanted by now. And they're having a meltdown. I'm not married. I don't have this certain job, this amount of money.
Kids. I don't have this car.
Who knows, whatever that is. And they have this huge judgment on their life. And they're not willing to suspend, and this is all of us, we're not willing to suspend the judgment of our lives until we've hit the end of it. We're in it and we're like, I'm failing. This is bad where I'm at right now. I should be further along. It should be a different experience that I'm having. And to me, we actually change how the experience of life that we have as we begin to divorce ourselves from a relationship with judgment. Then it becomes a thing of like, oh, I'm just sad. Like the emotions can come to the surface and be like, oh, I just feel lonely.
Yeah.
instead of like, I'm alone and don't have anybody.
I'm a failure. And
this is the worst thing ever. And my life isn't going anywhere. Like we, again, casting these judgments, assigning some meaning to all of it, instead of just being like, oh, I just would like some connection in a certain way right now that I don't have. And I feel a little sad about that. And yet I don't know what this all is and what this is all into. It's too soon to tell.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is like, while we're, because I'm thinking about reflecting on the last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you're saying when you're reflecting on your last year, like letting go of the judgments of, I don't know if this was good or this was bad. I don't know. Because,
for instance, I'll use another example. You have people who lost their entire homes in a fire a couple of years ago in Reading. At face value, everyone's going to be like, that's a crappy situation.
Horrible.
That's a horrible, and it's not fun to go through. No. However, there's potential inside of an experience like that where you extract experiences of love and connection from people who come and show up inside of your world. There's a healing process that's potentially available to you over things inside of yourself that can happen. There's growth and development. There's beauty that if you step out of your life at a macro level lens, looking at it over the course of 100 years, you might be like, the best gift that ever happened to me was my house burnt down. And out of what I apprehended, out of what I extracted, right? And again, that's being able to look back over our last year and go like, hey, it didn't feel fun. And there was pain, there was tears, there was fears. And it's too soon to tell like what my judgments are about the longevity of how that impacts my life. I just know that here's also the beauty that I extracted out of that circumstances and the way that I've chosen to re-navigate my life.
Yeah. So when I look back at this year, I see it's important to remember. And I think one thing that's helpful is to kind of journal out the different major events from a year. So that because I remember we were talking about our year this week and I completely forgot about this amazing trip that we'd had.
Yeah.
That felt like really life-changing and got overshadowed because after that really great trip, this crazy situation happened in our business. And so I just forgotten about this beautiful experience that we had. We went to Idaho together.
Oh, that's what I thought you were referring to. I was like,
yeah,
which
you looked
one?
confused.
I was like, I think it's Idaho.
Yeah, we went to Idaho.
A magnificent trip.
And here's the crazy thing. Now looking back at the year, you have kind of different ideas. So I got really sick because of, I can't remember what started it this year. There was something that happened and my body started spinning out of control.
Yeah. Which actually derailed us going to the set of The Chosen for the filming of season 4.
Yeah, we went to Idaho instead, which is ironic. And we went to Idaho to do a treatment, and it was such a sweet time between me and you.
Oh, it was one of my favorite times in our marriage. Like for me, in our marriage and experience, it's one of my favorite experiences we've had.
Yeah. And it wasn't even perfect. It was the bitter and the sweet because it was the treatment itself was hard and tiring.
Sitting locked in a room for like 60 hours.
Having energy pumped into your body. It was overwhelming a little bit, but it also was magical. We were in such partnership.
Yeah. We got into silence, a lot of silence.
We spent a lot of time in silence.
Oneness with ourselves and each other.
Together. We processed deep, vulnerable things. I shared like one of my most vulnerable dreams, which I think is fun. I remember, this is something I'll remember that trip by forever. I shared one of my dreams, like with God, with you, like this is what I could see happening, or this is what I want to see happen with our lives.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think dreams are as vulnerable to share as pain is.
Oh, absolutely.
And you responded so well. It just made me mush. Like you just like full belief with me and excitement in hearing it. And it wasn't like, gulp, I'm trying to be on your team. It was like, you're just with me. It was such a sweet, sweet trip. But when we look back, we could have said it was bad that I was so sick that I had to figure out something.
Correct.
And then I went on that trip.
Which also, let me add this to it. Like I felt devastated about not going to The Chosen.
Yeah.
It was like actually there was
big
a whole lot of really
you.
Beautiful things that were set up for all these, podcasting and stuff that we do. And my heart was so alive to get to do that. And I could look back and be like, I didn't get to go do that this year and this thing derailed it. But I was like, oh, but there was such beauty being present in the moment of the invitation that was extended for what we did do.
Yeah. And honestly,
and it didn't dismiss the pain that I did have. Like when I had it, I was like, I remember I teared up over it. I was like, I'm really sad I don't get to go do this thing. And then, so that was held within the like, oh, I allowed this next thing. I didn't sit in resentment of the thing that I was in. I was like, I'm going to choose into this new thing that is happening. There was an acceptance inside of me of the experience that was happening. And then I allowed beauty to make itself manifest in it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think of that even, my brain is really jumping today. Bing, 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 bing. I think that even what we're talking about is learning how to hold two different emotions at once, which was like, you felt sad and you allowed yourself to be sad and you processed it with me. And you also were like, we will have opportunities in the future.
Yeah.
Like this is not that's one of the ways we suspend judgment on a year or a moment is like, we don't know that this will never happen again or that this cannot, like that this is a bad thing. We don't know. It might be a much better time and a much better moment. So yeah, we went to Idaho and that was really, really special for us and really, really great. And then we had some things that we thought were really good at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Some plans that we thought were really good and that felt really right. And then those got flipped upside down through the betrayals that we went through. And I think even that is the like learning how to let go of what our perception is of what should be.
Yeah.
Like we had ideas of what this last year should be.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we're going to be videoing our podcast. We're going to be stepping in this whole new direction. We had a lot of brand new things.
Vision on the table and we were running after it until the train got derailed.
Yeah. And you know what our year was? Our year was us learning about forgiveness. And our year was us learning about humility. And our year was us learning about how to feel pain and not blame others and how to grieve without villainizing. Like some very deep stuff that we want, that we care about. And what's fascinating is in it, like, I think it brings this up in my mind. It ended up leading to a dialogue with friends of ours, John and Tiffany Matthews, that they became friends through the process, right? Through the betrayal process.
Yeah. And they've become like incredible, especially there's been elements of where John has communicated love to me specifically in the way that he's checked in on me and things like that, where I'm like, I feel so loved and supported by that man. And there's just a consistent care. And I'm like, oh, I inherited a faithful, steadfast couple of people into our lives. And I'm just in awe of that.
Yeah. And it literally happened because of the betrayal.
It wouldn't have happened any other way that I could foresee. It was the betrayal that initiated all of it. And it led us over into connecting into their community, and a community that's just outpoured so much love towards us. And I'm just like, how did this, like, this is the beauty. This is the beauty in the midst of ashes. And
then that's the crazy thing. Like I went to Charlotte twice this year and it was very healing for me both times. And so it was like, oh, well, this thing hurt me, but also it led me to something that is healing beyond just that moment.
Yeah.
And how beautiful to be with people that were so kind and gracious to us in the middle of that.
My gosh. Yeah. I experienced such abounding grace there and in the year. Like there were so many moments where grace overflowed, where I was broken in so many ways and had like exhaustion beyond belief. And when I couldn't take another step, there was somebody there to help take that step and move the needle forward.
So this year we went through so many hard things that are like laughable. Like if we told the story of this year, it's laughable what happened. And because I'm coming out of PTSD, every time something hard happened, I thought this should send me back. Like this should send me back into like, I'm feeling like I'm making progress out of PTSD, but this thing is so scary or unsafe or so painful. This is going to send me back, I'm sure. And yet every hard thing actually produced this thing inside of me that I was like, I am more resilient than I thought I was. Like, I was like, oh, I'm actually okay. Mm-hmm. Because what PTSD, I mean, it just broke my ability to emotionally process things or feel safe in any situation. Mm-hmm. So I'm expecting when when unsafe situations happen, that it's just going to reconfirm all my greatest fears and send me back. And it did not happen that way. Like, I was shocked. Even like one of the betrayals that happened was so similar to a betrayal I'd gone through in the past that was painful. Well, similar, but different. But like, I thought, oh, for sure, my system is going to say, see, you can't trust people. And that didn't show up.
Yeah.
That actually didn't show up. When we got betrayed, I didn't go into like, see, I'm always going to have to be on guard. I'm never going to be able to trust people. This is not, I actually went to, there's so many safe people in my life. Mm-hmm. There's so many people who are protective and who are loyal and who are good at talking through things and who are, who process life well. And I actually felt so loved by having so many people who handled the situation so well that it actually reconfirmed safety to me instead of reconfirming fear. Yeah. And I thought like something like that could take me out, or me getting sick again this year. Oh, I had a lot of PTSD around sickness. And so we were trying to contemplate this year, am I going to go back to Spain? Yeah. Like, it was so bad. It was so out of control. I think I had to go on an antibiotic, and that just sent my body into chaos. And so then I could not get out of the cycle of infections. It was so bad. And so in the past, that's what broke me. And this year, when I was so sick like that, there was like a grace for me to be able to look at the stability of God and be like, I'm going to be okay. Yeah. I remember this lesson inside of me happening of the picture of Peter on the water. And the storm is happening, and he's walking in the water towards Jesus until he looks at the waves, and then he starts to sink. And I literally knew this year, I can look at all of my symptoms and I can sink. Like, I could feel it. I can sink back into that PTSD, that panic, that fear that everything's going to fall apart, that I'm not going to be okay, that or I can hold on to like the truth. No, I'm going to be okay. Yeah. Jesus is with me. I'm going to make it through this. I'm going to look at his safe face instead of looking at my symptoms. And that feels like, I mean, it was a wrestle, because I would feel all of my body symptoms and then I would want to go into panic about it. And so in the past, I'd be like, a health issue is not what I want to go through. I need a break from health issues so that I can recover from my PTSD from it. And that's what I think a lot of us think. If I never experience the hard thing again, then I can be liberated from it.
But what you needed was a perspective shift, a belief shift, a heart shift. You needed a healing in those ways, in the way that you approach stuff.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know how to explain it, but this year is the first year I could actually feel my emotions and my spirit like choose into a truth where then my body manifested it. And it wasn't like this instantaneous, miraculous thing, but it was like, we were like, I don't know if I'm going to have to go to Spain again. I did not want to go to Spain again. I love it there. The doctor is amazing and his team is amazing and the facility is amazing. And every time I've gone, it's changed my life. I'm so thankful, but it is a lot to do.
Doesn't need to be a yearly occurrence.
And so I really didn't want to go back. And then I didn't. I literally and I had people praying with me and wrestling through it. And it's like my body just came into alignment. Yeah. And it responded well. And then I got another infection at the end of this year, which was still not fun. but it's the first time I got an infection and had no panic.
Yeah.
Like I got the infection. I went to the doctor, to urgent care. We got it sorted. I went on the antibiotics. I came off the antibiotics. And while that is very difficult on my body,
yeah,
I feel like a different human in how I'm processing it.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've seen over this last year what should have spiraled you out. I watched you continue to move into strength, power, new levels of truth being solidified inside of you, and the stability that's happened inside of that. And it wasn't because everything got easy.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think I'm the best version of myself to date that I am. And this last year should have made me the worst. It should have caused me to revert to the worst versions of myself. And I didn't become the best version of myself this year because it was so nice and so easy, and it all went my own way. It was because there was a fire in front of me, and in the midst of the fire,
there was like 10 fires.
One fire after another, and I was settled into, oh, there is no separation between me and my good daddy, my papa in heaven. Like, love is fully present with me right here in this circumstance. I am supported and I am okay regardless of what happens here right now. And I was really allowing myself to be embraced by that reality. And I've also cultivated for the last 5 years intimacy with people in a very unique way, where I am so bringing my very present experience to the table in the moment.
Yes.
And I'm pulling people in. Like, I used to be very self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
And like, because of eradicating self-sufficiency, I am capable, right? I didn't eradicate my ability to manage my own heart and deal with myself alone. But I eradicated this sense of being on an island in the midst of pain. And I brought people in, and I was absorbing one experience after another of faithful, loving kindness that was available and very present in human form, that reflected a God who's very involved inside of my story. And so it was like, it changed, like, it allowed something to be solidified in me and who I am, how I will live life. And again, beauty was extracted out of the whole situation. But it didn't come because everything was perfect.
Well, and this is what's so beautiful is when you go through broken seasons, if you allow them to help you heal your frame, how you process life.
Yeah.
What that does is it can make it so in the future, when hard things happen, you process it differently. And that's what you're talking about. You really paid the price in the last 7 years to learn how to feel your feelings and let people love you in that place. To be honest and to be vulnerable, to reach out, to not wait until you were at your breaking place, but to reach out when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And that was hard work. But because you changed your frame on that, now processing this year was an entirely, and that's what I want to tell people.
Entirely different.
The work you do doesn't mean that everything will be easy, but it means it will make the hard things so much easier.
Well, this is where grit and resilience is actually produced. Like, not just I compartmentalized and I survived a circumstance, but it's where I go to hell and back repeatedly and hell gets extracted out of me. And actually the kingdom of heaven makes itself manifest inside of my being. That means the peace and the joy and the happiness, it becomes an internal job that overtakes me, that we create a sense of fortitude within our own being, a knowing of everything's going to be okay. That doesn't mean everything's going to work out the way I want. That doesn't mean that pain and tragedy isn't here, but there is a knowing that forms inside of us so that, like, you know, I know a lot of people who are like, oh, I want all these opportunities, and wouldn't it be cool to have this thing happen and build this level of a dream, but they don't have the shoulders to carry it. They don't have the bandwidth internally to carry it because they haven't built the resilience yet by going through fires until there's such a peace that surpasses all of our understanding, where we're like, Oh yeah. Like you can totally have meltdowns going on everywhere. And there's a trust inside of your being that says, it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay.
We're going to walk through to the other side of this. And that is
worth gold.
Oh, that is so worth gold. That's worth way more than gold.
That's why I want to tell people, when you're in the healing journey, most people, it gets messier before it gets better.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just reading some comments about our program, the LCMC, and they were like, if you could just tell the students it gets messier and then it gets better, but it gets messier before it gets better. And the concept is most of us lose vision when it gets harder. You start dealing with your emotions and you start going on the healing process and inviting love in and learning how to trust people and learning how to build healthy relationships. And we think, oh, I'm just going to learn how to build healthy relationships and then every relationship will magically be healthy. And then every relationship will magically be solved. And it doesn't work that way. We are outworking things inside of us as we grow. And, but every step you make does make a better future for you. Even when it feels hard, even when you haven't broken through to the other side, even when you haven't sorted it all out, every step towards health that you choose builds towards a better future.
Yeah. And we're talking about the steps forward and all of this. And this is going back to a conversation about growth. When we actually take the time to do a year review and look back on it and look at both sides of the coin of what's happened, we can then assess development inside of our soul. And I think that there are people that resist growth. They purposely stay in cycles.
Yeah.
And they live a life of resistance. But even in the most hardened cases, there's always a needle, I think, for the most part, moving forward. And, and finding those needles that have moved forward can inspire us.
When you're saying needles, you're talking about like a scale or something? Yeah.
They talk about moving the needle forward.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of, if I can reflect and find any level of growth inside of my life, any level of development, there should always be some level of evolution, even at the greatest resistance.
Yeah.
We can then use that as momentum for all the trials and tribulations and things that come, the sorrows that happen in the coming year. Because as you approach next year, you begin to go like, no, I gained something out of all of that last year. What if I could gain exponential amounts out of it? What if like the gold instead of a nugget became like a treasure trove of gold that I ended up mining out of my coming year? And so like for us, we have been over the last 15 years of marriage building a momentum of excitement about the years in front of us. Instead of bracing for what could be bad, there's a momentum in our souls that has been built of like, what are we going to extract regardless of what comes out of this next year?
Yeah.
And our hearts being open to that has actually yielded hope for the year in front of us.
You know, the other thing I was thinking that you found this year is you got really inspired by NDEs.
Yeah, near-death experience videos. Yeah.
And like your heart has been the most sparked about an eternal purpose and vision for
and
our
an
lives.
Eternal perspective.
Yeah.
Right. It helped. Like I've always had that in my life at some level, but it's really helped me pull out of being fixated on this very moment of time right here and have an expanded view of like, what is my life? What is it for? What am I getting out of it? And it's hope for something that transcends these minimal years that we spend on this earth. And that's something that you can't break. Yeah. You can't break that hope inside of me. Once someone has apprehended an eternal hope, an eternal perspective on life doesn't feel like something you're having to just trudge through. It becomes very purposeful, every bit of it.
Yeah, which we'll probably do a podcast on. We'll do a podcast on the eternal perspective because you really have come to feel like things are not as high stakes as I felt like they were.
Yeah.
And I have the power to live a great life.
Yeah.
No matter what's happening.
Yeah. I think there's even a settling in me because I'm not judging, like my judgments about where my life is currently at or not at, all of that stuff starts really dwindling, those judgments. And, and I am settling into, my goodness, like if I didn't produce anything more with my life as far as like an external measurement, but if I just continued on the exact path that I'm in, it would all be worth it. Like there is something for my soul. Like if I didn't gain more influence, if I didn't create more wealth, if I didn't conquer anything, it's totally irrelevant because it's a heart job. This is all about the heart job that's going on inside of me. And I could do that if I moved to Africa right now in the, I don't know, outback jungles. Who knows? Like the middle of nowhere. You could do it anywhere. You could do it anywhere. You could do it in Montana. I could do it in Montana. I could go become a hermit in Montana. You know, like it just doesn't matter if I now have a whole new power over life when I'm sitting from an eternal perspective.
And when you're looking at it from like my heart journey is what matters on the planet. Like in my life, the journey I go on in my heart is what matters more than the outside things that happen.
Yep. And that's not a fresh idea, right? Like that's been something that's been happening for me since I was in my early 20s. Yes. But the amplification of that in this season of really letting a lot of the background noise fall off. And it's still falling off. There's still more to fall off in my process.
Me too.
But it's definitely completely rewiring me.
Yeah.
And that's something that I got out of this last year.
Yeah.
A greater eternal perspective that I'm dwelling upon.
So this is our encouragement to you to reflect, make a list of the hard things you went through so you can be like, yeah, wow, I am badass. Look at how much I went through. Look at how much I made it through. And then sometimes you might like, I've had to cry a little bit at the end of this year about like, whoa, that was a lot. And make a list of all the beautiful things, all the things that, all the love that you got, all the good experiences.
What are the things that did heal?
What are
that
the things
did get grieved, resolved well?
What are the ways that you did grow? What are the gifts that you got from the hard things? I think having a full ability to see both, and that's what we're talking about in this, is learning how to hold both of those things together is one of the healthiest things that you can learn to do. It's what we teach our students in our school, that emotional maturity is our ability to hold more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And if you want to go on the heart journey, if you're like, yes, this is about the heart journey and I need help with that, Living Fully Alive is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
Sign up at that. Yeah. And also we are starting to do things on our social media. So like we have the video of Justin leading his dad through the ice plunge, which you guys should watch because it's so tender and precious and so cute. And like I just asked on my social media, like, what do you guys want to hear about from the podcast this year? And we're just gonna have a lot of interaction this year. We did a tub time with Justin about one of our podcasts. And so follow us on social media and engage the conversation with us. We want this to be very participatory this year.
And last week we said that the first person that emailed us that had listened to the Christmas episode would get a special gift, and I'd announce their name. I'm going to announce your name next week, so stay tuned.
I think they messaged us at 3:30 our time. 3:30 a.m.
Yeah, 3:30 a.m.
Which was like just a couple hours after it was released. They deserve to win.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
And so you did.
Yeah. Come participate with us.
And last but not least, share.
Yeah. The best thing for our podcast is when people share.
Yeah, we really appreciate you all. This last year has been such a gift, everyone who's followed us and allowed us to be part of their story. We've had countless stories where people have shared how we've impacted them, how we've been part of divorces, as we've been the encouragement in that, or job losses, or entire moves from one state to another state, or just
deconstructing journeys.
Yeah, like we like people are just like, I feel like you guys are my friends who have been with me, and that you were my consistent every week. And that's been melted my heart and been really powerful. And so thank you guys for sharing those stories with us. And,
oh yeah. Every single time somebody messages, it feels so
we
impactful.
Share those with our team and stuff like that. We're like, so ultimately at the end of the day, we do what we do because we like to see an impact on humanity. That's really the reason we do it. So that's really so good for our souls when we get to hear it. So thanks for sharing those stories with us. And 2024, a year of nuance.
A year of nuance, a year of going deep in your heart journey, which is an eternal, you will always get the reward of a heart journey.
Yeah, you will.
That's an eternal gift that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, and last thing.
Hey.
I say this all the time, but really, go write a review for us if you got impacted on iTunes. That's a good spot to do it. Because that helps us and other people see what's inside this podcast. And it helps us as we're moving into the journey of trying to get guests on who would be hard to land guests, because they can kind of be like, oh, here's what people have to say about this. This looks like something I want to participate with. So anyways, I'm going to go away now.
I'm so thankful for you.
Oh,
we did it this year.
Yeah. High five. Why don't we throw that on? Whoa.
I wanted it to be loud enough they could hear it.
Mm-hmm. Well done.
We are closer together than we were at the beginning of this year.
That's true.
And our marriage is better than it was at the beginning of this year.
It is.
And that is not the way it could have happened.
Nope. Could have been disastrous.
And we're better people.
Yeah, we are.
You're a better version of you than you've ever been.
Ah, thanks.
Yeah.
Quit saying that my old version was crap.
It was crap. Wait, what about me?
Oh, same to you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Safe face. All right. Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Bye.